Welcome to Gemcast Live. Today we have our reader, John Resnick Writes, reading from Tyrannid San's story. And without further ado, here is our narrator.
Buddy, hope I'm doing well this morning. Did you want the wonderful author to say a little bit about the work first, or did you want me to just go?
Sure, let's see if she's interested in talking a little bit about the story, just giving us a little heads up.
All right. Well, I can hint a little bit about what the story is about. It's an epic dark fantasy trilogy, and it has multiple main characters. And this first chapter is an introduction to the first character named Philoene. Have fun.
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay. And I just want to say ahead of time, I appreciate and thank you to the author for giving me the opportunity to read this, even not just verbally, but I read this chapter and I thought it was a great piece of work. So I'm very much looking forward to reading it to all of you. So I'm gonna go ahead and blow this up. And is my mic coming through okay?
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah, well, let's go. Whispers from the Dark, Volume 1 of the Mid Realm Chronicles. For the ones who are looking for a way to escape reality, you are not alone. Chapter 1, Goodbye. Philoene's Perspective. Philoene, wake up! A rough tug yanked the blankets from me, sending a chill through my bones. Groggily, I opened my eyes to find my mother looming over me, her face pale with terror. We have to go, now! She spoke in hurried whispers, her hands already working to stuff a few clothes into a backpack. The urgency in her voice shook off the last vestiges of sleep. I scrambled to get dressed, my fingers trembling from the cold as I became more aware of my surroundings. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. I quickly grabbed my favorite wooden figurine of a wolf from my nightstand as I moved towards the window. But before I could glance outside, my mother's iron grip seized my arm, pulling me away sharply. Stumbling, I followed her down the creaking wooden stairs, my heart hammering in my chest. At the base of the stairs, my father stood waiting, a firm hand on the shoulders of my shivering younger sister Mira. He had a sword strapped to his back and a pack slung over his shoulder. His face was a mask of grim resolve. "What's happening?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. No one answered. My father's eyes flicked to my mother. "Get the girls on the horse," he commanded, his voice low and steady. "Ride as fast as you can. I'll meet you there." "But what about you?" My mother's voice cracked. "Go," he barked, already moving towards a chest in the corner, his sword gleaming under the dim light. Without a word, my mother dragged us into the cold night air. An acrid scent of smoke filled my lungs. In the distance, I heard screams and saw flames flicking at the rooftops. The once peaceful village was now a battlefield. Mira took hold of my hand. I felt a lump beginning to form in my throat as I held her small hand in mine. Mira resisted as I pulled my trembling hand free to mount the horse. And just as my mother was about to put Mira in front of me, I saw them. Figures draped in dark robes moved through the village, their hands raised, chanting in an ancient, twisted tongue. Runes glowed ominously on their sleeves, and wherever they passed, fire followed. They carried long, curved swords, cutting down anyone in their path. Necromancers. "Hurry," my mother urged, pushing Mira in my arms. But the horse reared, frightened by the chaos around us. I took hold of Mira and dragged her close to me. She yelped in fear and held onto the horse's neck. Suddenly, my father burst from the house, holding his sword in one hand and a dagger in the other. A dagger he thrust toward me. It was a leather-bound hilt that felt foreign in my small hands. On the blade, a single word was etched. Brave. I knew the dagger was going to be a gift for my birthday. My father had it especially made for me. As I fastened it to my belt, the necromancers closed in. My father stood firm, his sword raised, ready to defend us. One of the necromancers stepped forward, his eyes glowing beneath the shadow of his hood. He extended a skeletal hand toward my father, and I watched in horror as my father's body stiffened, his sword clattering to the ground, his feet lifted from the earth, suspended by an unseen force. Mira cried for our dad. The necromancer's hand twisted into a fist, and my father gasped. Blood trickled from his nose and mouth. His body crumpled like a doll, tossed aside as if it was nothing. Mira screamed and hid her face in her arms. I pulled her closer to me. "Go!" my mother yelled, the words ripped from her throat in anguish after seeing the death of her husband. Without hesitation, she urged the horse forward with a sharp slap. The beast bolted, carrying me and Mira away from the horror. I grabbed the reins tightly, tears forming in the corner of my eyes as the wind howled in my ears. Over my shoulder, I caught a final glimpse of my mother, her back to me, holding a glowing stone in her hands. A magic amulet she always carried around her neck. The necromancer advanced, his blade flashing as it cut through her defense. The light of her stone extinguished and she fell. The necromancer's cold voice echoed in my mind, speaking dark incantations that haunted my dreams. "Dinna waljul, vas yun feln do love han." And then, blinding flash of white light filled my vision. I felt Mira go limp in my arms. The shock vibrated through my bones. "Mira?" I whispered in her ear. Silence. I jolted awake, my breathing coming in ragged gasps. Light fell through the curtains, warming my skin, and Artemis, my wolf companion, nuzzled against my cheek. "Just a nightmare," I whispered shakily, trying to convince myself. "It's just a nightmare." "You seemed far away in your dreams again when," came Artemis' voice in my mind, a calm and familiar presence. "The past will haunt you if you let it." "You can't help it," I murmured. "It just happens." "All right." Artemis stood up and stretched. "Now that you're awake, we should eat. I'm starving." The door to my room was swung open before I could answer. Barnabas shuffled in, eyebrows lifting when he saw me still in my bed. "Well now," he grunted, pausing halfway through the door. "I assumed you'd be up and about, young lady." My voice was still thin. "I had a very vivid dream I couldn't shake." "Vivid, was it?" he murmured, while rummaging through the chaos of my desk. "Sounds like soul wandering." "Soul wandering? Explain." "And what are you— Hey!" Notebooks tumbled to the floor in an avalanche of paper. "Looking for ink," he said without shame. "Lower left drawer," I sighed. "And stop stealing my stuff." He fished out the half-empty inkwell, lifting a brow. "Your stuff?" Dry chuckle escaped him. "Funny how possessions work when bought with my coin." "Not really yours, then, when—" Artemis's mental tone was smug. "I get it." I rolled my eyes and grabbed my clothes from my closet. "Have it your way." "Breakfast is on the table," Barnabas said, already walking out with one of my empty notebooks tucked under his arm. "Absolutely stolen again." "We're nearly out of supplies. We'll need some herbs and meat for the rest of the week. And less complaining." He winked at me. I rolled my eyes again. Left alone, I sat on my bed for a moment, letting the warmth of the room settle around me. One bed, a closet, a desk drowned in books. It wasn't much, but it was enough for a woman like me. Barnabas had taught me how to read, how to shape letters into meaning, and how to survive a world that wanted me dead. When I found Artemis, or rather, he found me, Barnabas even taught me how to communicate telepathically with him. He told me I had it in me to become a great mage if I wanted to. He was a mage and claimed to have gone into hiding after the war started. He tried to teach me how to use magic, but we noticed it was partially blocked. Even though I could talk to Artemis, stronger spells failed me. Barnabas Sally said it was like grasping a stream with hands wrapped in cloth. Water slid past but never fully touched. Fortunately, he never pushed me harder than I could bear. 13 years with him is the day he found me cradling Mira's lifeless body on the roadside. An 11-year-old girl trying to shield her sister from the necromancers long after she'd gone cold. When he found me, he tried to gently lift Mira from my stiff arms. I had protested at first, feeling as if I'd failed to protect my little sister. But his calm and gentle approach convinced me to hand her over. Together, we buried her in the garden of his little cottage. From then on, he took care of me like a father. I swallowed hard. No matter how many years had passed, that ache never dulled. Looking back on it, I wish I could have told my younger self that it was okay to grieve and none of it was my fault. Nobody could expect an 11-year-old to protect her family from the necromancers. After I got dressed, I moved to the living room, finding Barnabas in his favorite seat by the fireplace, a book in his lap and a small table with writing supplies next to him. A crackling fire washed the room in amber light. Shelves lined the walls covered with books old and new. A thin layer of dust trailed through the air as the sun shined through the windows. The air smelled of warm bread, old parchment, and pine sap melting from fresh logs. I drifted toward the dining table by the windowsill. Frost flowers had bloomed across the glass. Snow blanketed the pines outside in thick, delicate layers. Tiny wooden carvings lined the sill, little animals Barnabas had made over the years. And between them sat my childhood wolf figurine, its paint chipped, its grin forever crooked. I smiled at the memory of the one and only thing I'd ever carved, the saddest flower known to existence. "Any good food left?" Artemis nudged the back of my leg. 3 slices of bread and eggs," I muttered. Artemis didn't eat again. I slid a plate to the floor. Artemis devoured it with dramatic hunger. "Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Tell him that." I snorted, grabbed another plate, and handed it to Barnabas. "Artemis says you're setting a bad example. You should eat your breakfast." "He shouldn't tell an old man how to live," he grumbled, hiding his smile. I leaned over his shoulder. "So, what are you writing?" He closed the notebook at once, suspiciously fast. "History of the ancestral region." "Anything fascinating?" "Besides the part where late High King Talaron banned magic, tried to erase us, and started the hunts?" He gave me a sideways look. "At least you paid attention in history class." "And Talaron exiled his eldest son for being a Magi." His sigh carried a weight I couldn't place. "And even his brother Edmund couldn't stop him from gathering the ones who would become necromancers." A chill traced my spine hearing that name. Images of the necromancers killing my family flashed before my eyes. I shook my head trying to rid myself of the images. Back to my question you smartly evaded. What is your research actually about? I leaned in, grinning. "You and your cursed curiosity, little one," he muttered, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "I'm not little anymore. Haven't been for a while," I shot back. "To me, you'll always be the half-frozen girl I found trying to save her sister already gone." His voice softened. "But you're right. You've grown into a woman. I just don't want you tangled in this." "It might keep me out of trouble," I joked. He snorted. "Hardly. Now go. Hunt. Bring us back some herbs and meats. Then we'll talk and I might share a thing or two." He winked. Reluctantly, I rose and ruffled Artemis's fur. Cloak tightened, bow slung over my back, we stepped into the brittle morning air. The cold bit straight through the fabric and skin. The forest greeted us in silence, a cathedral of snow-draped pines whispering secrets to the wind. Artemis moved ahead in a ghost-like rot. I closed my eyes, letting my mind brush his. For a heartbeat, I saw through his eyes. His eyes told me how the road changed where there was safe to follow. With his ears, I heard the morning birds awaken, the night creatures crawling back into their lairs. When I broke the connection, the world felt too small, my senses too dull. "Keep sharp, buddy," I murmured, noticing the odd stillness in the forest. I scanned the ground for tracks of rabbits or deer, but only found small footsteps of mice and birds. Hours passed before we finally found tracks of figured creature, leading us deeper into the forest. Suddenly, something caught my eye, a movement at the edge of my vision. Artemis froze. I slipped an arrow onto the string. Slowly, I turned in the direction I saw the movement. A pheasant burst from the bush. I drew back the string of my bow, the muscles in my back complaining against the strain. Breathe, draw, release. The arrow flew through the air and found its mark with a soft thud. "One down," I smiled, binding the bird to my pack. "Good. Now can we go home? Not made for this cold." Artemis grumbled and brushed against my leg. "Not yet, buddy. We still need some herbs and one more animal if we can find one." Artemis grumbled in protest but followed me through the forest. It took us another hour gathering herbs, but unfortunately, no other animals showed. A uneasy knot at my chest. Normally, these forests were full of animals, big and small, even in the winter season. But today, a faint scent of burning wood drifted through the falling snow. My heart quickened. "Artemis, maybe we should head back. I don't like this smell." "Me neither. Maybe it's Barnabas stoking the fire." But even in my mind, his tone tightened. It wasn't Barnabas. We were hours from home, and the smoke from the fireplace couldn't possibly find us here. If we hurried back now, we could reach home by early evening. Snow began to fall in thick flakes, dusting the ground with a pale, silent bead. I kept my hood low. Every fortnight we hunted in the forest for food or went down to the village by the lake to trade herbs and replenish our supplies. But today felt different, ominous. "I hope Barnabas has made us some tea to warm up," Artemis said on our way back to the cabin. "You're such a weird wolf," I chuckled, feeling some of the tension lift from my chest. After a few hours of trudging through the biting wind, we finally arrived back at the small area of our home. But something was wrong. The smoke from the hearth was too thick. "Something is amiss," Artemis growled, increasing my worries. We hurried, my feet slipping on the frozen ground as we neared the clearing of the field where our wooden cabin should have stood. My heart sank. The house was gone, nothing more than a heap of charred wood and ash. Some flames still licked in the corners, the wood smoldering in the snow. The stables were empty and the livestock gone. The quiet that hung over the scene was suffocating. Here and there, scattered brained chickens ran around, but otherwise, all was quiet. How could this have happened? I walked past Mira's grave. It was unharmed. As I put a flower on it, I whispered, "What happened here?" That's the chapter. I didn't any audio.
Thank you so much for reading it. It was really great.
Yeah, no, well, happy to read a good chapter. Thank you for writing it.
So now comes the part where people can ask questions or
Yeah. Let's see. Aiden, are you there? You might have stepped away for a second. Yeah, so chapter, I'll ask you a question or two, I guess, until it gets back to help out. What inspired you to write it? The series, I mean.
I see also that same question in the chat. What inspired me to write it? Well, that's kind of a funny story. I started writing this when I was 19. And the story came to mind because as a child, I had a lot of nightmares. And I remember my dad said to me, maybe you should, if you like fantasy stories so much, maybe you should think about those worlds before you fall asleep, and then you might dream about them instead of the nightmares. And I tried to do that, creating entire worlds in my head right before I fell asleep, in the hopes I wouldn't have a nightmare that night. But it didn't really work. So when I was 12, somebody said to me, you can train yourself to lucid dream so that you can, if you have a nightmare, you can change the dream into your world. And in order to learn how to lucid dream, you have to write down your dreams. Every morning, you have to write down what you dreamed about. Even if you can't remember a thing, you just write something down. And that's actually how the story a little bit started, because I had to write down all my dreams. And yeah, I had created all these worlds, so they started mixing with my dreams. And that's a little bit how the Mid Realm existed. The creatures from the underworld are from my nightmares. The creatures from the Mid Realm are from the dreams I tried to create, and so forth. Yeah.
Right on.
Aiden, I don't know if your mic's working, but I figure you would want her to take questions from chat. Okay, well, Romantic and I kind of had the same question on that one. Yeah, what other questions do we have from chat?
Let's see if I
And also-
have decent questions.
And I hope I did justice to your characters with that reading.
Yes, you did. Thank you. I see here a question from Butler. Where did you find the inspiration for them, for the characters? Yeah, good question. They just appeared. I don't really know. I think some came from my dreams. Yeah. Next question, like, are they pieces of people you know, or? Well, yes and no. Artemis is a little bit inspired by my own inner narrator. Everybody has like this inner voice that talks to you whenever you feel down or something. And the other characters, yeah, I don't know how to explain it. They just happened, they just appeared. What I did do to create them, maybe that answers your question a little bit more. I work as a psychologist, and often when I want to diagnose someone, I ask certain questions. So that's what I did to my characters. I asked certain questions and let them respond in their personality, and that's how their being evolved, came into existence. So maybe that, that. And I see. Hey, we can hear you.
Wait, we can hear me now?
Yeah.
I have no idea what happens. I'm sorry for interrupting right now. Nothing changed on my mic. The first time I noticed was when John stopped reading. I had said some things, and you guys kind of just, continue, like you went with a conversation. I was like, oh, I'm getting ignored a little bit. Okay, let's just run with this though. They're doing a good job. But no, my mic wasn't enough. There was no setting that changed. But please continue. I'll just comment at the end. I'll comment at the end.
All right. Let's see if there are any other questions in the chat.
I'll do the questions for you. Did you do the one Elmir asked? What do you feel about basing characters off of actual people? Do you do it because they're convenient? Do you avoid them as much as possible because you feel that it's lame? So how does that impact your writing?
I think I will never create a character that's completely the same as someone that I know. Maybe I take certain characteristic traits or personality traits from people I know. So, and I think that's more of a personal thing. I'd like to create from nothing and not duplicate a person from my own life into my book.
I find that in mine, I think every character is part myself. Is that true for you? That like part of yourself is in all of your characters, maybe to different extents?
Yes, definitely. Every main character has one, sometimes two personality traits that I have.
One thing that what I was commenting on before that didn't, wasn't audible was I thought like for a chapter one, I thought the promises that you make to your readers is excellent. Like you start with action, you have emotional connection to the characters. So, like the reader has the idea that like, okay, it's like an action fantasy series, but there's like good characterization and I could like, feel attached to the characters. I thought that was very strong. And there's a lot of exposition, but it's not an info dump. It just kind of like matter of factly exists. Cause that's something that I feel authors like really struggle with, especially like early on in the book. It's like you want to place the reader there. Like, hey, here's my world. Like we're gonna have an adventure. But like you can't, do that without actually writing it. But like you find a way to establish that. And I thought you did that very well. Like and another thing that you did well that I really particularly stood out to me was like when when the necromancers first appear, you let it go, you describe, like you let the emotion linger, and then you identify that it's necromancy. Like I feel as though many writers on the platforms we're used to would just identify it as necromancers. Oh, there's and like but you like let the emotional essence of it like take root first. I thought that was very good.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, in keeping with all that, like, where does that I mean, it could be just be writer talent, but, like, how do you feel or we'll just use John's question. Did the emotion and tone sound okay? Oh, no, we'll get back to that. I'm sorry. How does where does that come from, and how do you think that you're able to, like, funnel this into your writing?
What do you mean? What does what come from?
Well, let's see how can I differ?
You mean
Basically, like, your writing style,
mm,
where do you get that from?
a lot of feedback from other writers and reading a lot of books. And if you find something that you're like, oh, that's a really good way to describe this emotion or this behavior or this certain action, remember it, write it down. I have like a whole document of inspirations of other books and other writers. I'm like, oh yeah, that's how you create a scene like that. And then you give your own twist to it with what you want to portray. So if you want, I have, for example, I have a whole list of what emotions look like in body language, in nonverbal communication. What do others see on someone when someone is angry? What do they see in their face, in the shoulders, and the stance, and what do they hear in the intonation? Yeah. So that is
Actually, that leads to another question because, like, sometimes, like, there's so much, like, out there on the internet, just about different types. There's so much that has to do with writing, you know? There's so many aspects of it. There's so much that a writer has to have in their minds when they do it. That, like, me personally, like, I will sit down and I will write, and a lot of, like, the literary devices or some of the stuff you described, like, it kind of happens naturally. But you identified a lot of things in your last comment. I do this A, B, C, D, and how do you how are you able to keep that conscious? And also, like, I feel as though like writing is partially like a way to like take the subconscious and bring it forth into the page. Like, how are you able to like keep all that information in your mind and also write?
good question. Now, when write, I just write what comes up in my mind. And then when I edit, that's when I grab all the information and try to make the story flow. If you read my first drafts, it's terrible. It's just like words on paper that pop up in my mind. And then when I edit it, that's when I really think about how do I describe this? How will I get the emotion clear? Or how will I, yeah.
I think that was a great answer. Let's bring John back now. I did want to comment like on what everybody's saying in the comment section, typing like the emotional differentiation, the voice differentiation. I think is outstanding. Like not only the fact that you did the voices, but also that like you recognized. I mean, it was like a chapter with lots of different characters, and you recognized exactly when to shift like, it was really, like, interesting and good how you did that.
Thanks, I really appreciate that. And yeah, just from my own personal preference, I mean, it's a little tougher to read the chapter from the character's voice or with the character's voice, but I feel just because I'm a big Jeff Hayes fan through Dungeon Crawler Carl and some of his other stuff, actually doing it from that character's point of view when you're reading actually lets you connect with him more. So I'm glad that I went ahead to reach out to the author about a week ago to get a look at the chapters so I could familiarize myself with the characters and try and ask her some questions and make them as true to what she wanted as I could, based on different things like age and just how they might sound a little bit. Because it's not about how I want it to sound, it's about how she wants it to sound. Because it's her world and those are her babies, so I make sure that I'm doing them justice if I can.
Well, you did. Thank you.
If anybody,
Well, I definitely.
go ahead, please.
Oh, no, I was just saying, I just want to make sure that I'm doing what the author wants because it's their creation and it's about what, it's not her, it's not about me. I'm just kind of trying to do a favor and do something nice. But it is a little tough to do so many voices and be able to switch it over a little bit. So I definitely took a few minutes to practice last night to make sure I didn't stumble because I wanted this to sound good for everybody.
I thought it was a fascinating experience because like I write with the third person omniscient and I swap the POVs all the time in chapters as well. So it kind of shows what it would look like if it was read like that through, you know, the minds of the different characters and what it would sound like. So that was just fascinating overall to see that. Well, let me just make sure because okay. RL Butler's typing something, so we might get a question. But yeah, San, thank you for writing that. Like it was amazing to hear it because like I felt as though like there's so many things our stories have in common, and then you know like one after the other after the other. I was like it was like exciting to see it manifest. So yeah, and like somebody already said, I think Butler, she's gonna read your story. Yeah, let's get it more attention, definitely. And John, thank you for reading. Thank you for all the effort you put in. John, you guys should see like John has like a studio now, basically. He's created a studio in like his house. Like it was great to see. So
Yep. Down boots, so it'll be a little better. I just got to get a better mic than this $50 Snowball Blue that I had for streaming. It was Superman 9592 back when, a little Apex, but yeah, no, I need something that'll catch voice a little bit better.
okay. So thank you for everybody for coming. That concludes our Gemcast. Thank you, San, for the story and John for reading. And we will be back with another episode.